Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Creating Groups and Differentiation using Snowflake. And after our presentation, we will have a question and answer period, as always. To welcome Danielle Macklin to stage. Danielle will be leading the seminar this evening. Hi, Danielle.
Hi, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. So we are going to be learning today about how to create groups on your Snow.Live platform. So Snow.Live being our online web-based version of the Snowflake lesson activity app. So I'm going to begin by sharing with everyone my screen. So I've already logged into my Snowflake account, and from here I'm on our main Explore page. And since today's focus is on groups, we can find groups under My Lesson Activities. The groups function as a collaborative workspace. So it's an opportunity for you to add lesson activities that you've created or that you've saved from the community into a space that you can share with your colleagues. So this is really great if you are part of a particular grade level and you want to share your materials there, or if you're in a curriculum team. This is a really good feature to have so that you can have everything organized in one spot and you don't need to search for lessons or tell your colleagues to search for your lessons. So we'll go through all of the steps. I will show you how to create groups. These are 2 example groups that I have, and then I will show you how you can manage those groups and add lesson activities to them. So from here, I'm going to begin with creating a new group. And that brings me to just my kind of basic overview of what my group is. And this is where I can add my customizations. So I'm going to say that this group is my, let's say my 2nd grade team. I can add descriptions for this group. So this group is lesson activities for the teachers, and I have the option too where I can add an image to my group. So if I upload a new image, this is going to pull in just from my computer. So any images that I've saved from my computer, I can pull in. Let's see if I can find a cute one. So there we go. So I've changed my group image. This is really great feature to have, having different images, because as you're creating more groups, maybe you're dividing it by your content. So you have your math group, your science group, your ELA group. You can have different customized images to help organize. So now I've created my group. Super simple, just a few steps to do that. And now I have the ability to add more customizations. So you can see right now there's nothing in my group, and there's no one other than just me in the group. I can change that by editing. So it brings back that early creation page. And now I can add team members to it. So, and I'm just going to use Jack as one of my teammates. I can add him, and then I'll use my email as well. And there we go. You can see that as those teammates were added in, they're added in as members. Being a member means that they can browse and they can play the lesson activities in the group, but they can't add any lesson activities or edit. However, if I change that privilege and give them privileges as administrators, the admins can manage the lesson activities and invite new members. So maybe I forgot to include somebody on my team. If Jack is an admin, he can send a request to add that person as well. Now I can go ahead and apply changes. And as simple as that, I've now created my group with my 3 team members. So we can see there's my little picture. There is my description of the group if I ever forgot what I had been working on. So that was the easiest part. And it's just as easy to add lesson activities to those groups as well. So I'm going to walk you through that piece of adding lesson activities. So I'm going to go to My Lesson Activities. And to add a lesson activity to the group, you first need to be able to save it either to the community so that it would be public for everyone, or to save it privately. So I'm just going to take one of my lesson activities, and none of these have been saved to the community yet. They're just in my collection. So I'm going to go to Save to Snowflake Community. And with this lesson activity, I don't have a description for it yet, I am going to keep this lesson activity private. So by selecting this, that means only the members within my group are going to be able to see this lesson activity as we play it. So they're the only ones who will have access to it. If I had shared it to the community, that means anyone has the ability to see that lesson, play that lesson, and then create their own version of that lesson through editing. So for now, I'm just going to save this as private, which I can't because I haven't added a description. And let me just edit that lesson very quickly. I can also save to the community, and I'll have the same pop-up window where I'll have the option, do I want to save this publicly? Do I want to save it privately? So I'm going to, in this case, I'm going to keep this just private. So once I've uploaded that lesson, if I go back to my lesson activities, to add that lesson to my group, I just need to find it under the shared lesson activities. So the only way you can add lessons to the group is by sharing them. So again, either sharing it publicly to the Snowflake community or sharing it privately. So from my shared lesson activities, this just opens it up so that more people are able to access it. When we say shared, that's what it means. Other people can see your lesson from their dashboards. It's not exclusive just to your lesson dashboard. And now I have the ability, I can see my lesson activity info. And now I can share that with my group. Oh, let me try this again. There we go. So I can share that with my second grade team. If I wanted to share it to multiple groups, I could select multiple groups. And then just like that, the lesson has been added to my group. So if I go back to my group, and then back to that dashboard, we can see now that lesson activity is there. So any member in my team can now play that lesson activity. And as I added more lesson activities, I have the ability to sort them. I can sort it alphabetically or reverse alphabetically. I could also sort it by my newest lesson activities or the oldest. And this is for every group member. So all of these can be changed for each individual group members. So if Jack was looking at this group from his dashboard, he could choose to organize it in a different way as well. We also can search for things specifically for age, the lesson activity type. So these would just be filters. So as you're adding more lessons and you wanted to make it easier to find things, this is just another feature to help sort through and organize. With all of the lessons that you add to your group, if one of my team members added a lesson, I would receive a notification. I'd have a little yellow dot next to the bell that would tell me who has added a lesson to my group. And then I could just click on that and it would take me directly to the group settings. So I would be able to see any of the lesson activities my group has made. So it's a really easy, quick to use feature that we have, creating groups. Are there any questions at this time about groups before I move on and talk a little bit more about how you can differentiate some of the lesson activity types and add those to your groups as well?
We haven't had any questions come in as of yet, Danielle. However, I did publish a poll. If people want to take a look at the poll and answer that, that would be helpful just for us to gather some information. So you should have that under your poll feature. And of course, at any time as Danielle moves forward, if you have any questions about what she's already covered, feel free to jump on and type a question and we'll share it with her. Thank you.
And I'll give everyone a second to put your attention onto the poll while I get ready for the next one.
Danielle, we do have a question from Maria.
Sure.
And it says, do the members you add have to have active Snowflake accounts?
I believe so, because in order to access the group, you would need to log into your Snowflake account to do that. So I'm in my Snowflake dashboard. And that's a question with your IT department as far as setting up and adopting your accounts, what would need to be done for that. So they'd have to have their Snowflake functioning.
In order to access any of the stuff, you would need to have a Snowflake account.
Yes. All right. So now that I've had that group and I've added my lesson to it, oh, I heard another little ding, so I'll wait for a second.
We just have a question for the question and answer period of the thing, and it's when creating a tag lesson, how do I change the image layout when selecting from my Google Drive account? But I think once we get through towards the end, then we can go back and revisit that if that's okay.
Perfect, absolutely. Right. And I love the tags lesson template. That's become one of my favorites and a really great assessment tool. So, all right, so I'm going to go through and we're going to talk a little bit about how to use some of the lesson activities for differentiate them for instruction. What I did is I just found 2 from the community. I grabbed this Romeo and Juliet one, and then I grabbed an elementary math one. With all of our lesson activities from the community, you have the ability to see the info about the lesson activity, any standards that relate to it. You also have the ability to like the lesson. So that would save it to a kind of a separate list if you hadn't had a chance to play it. But once you do play that lesson activity, it does become part of your lesson activity dashboard. So I had played that earlier. If I go back to my lesson activities, I can see there's the Romeo and Juliet lesson. I'll do just a quick play. This lesson activity is a drop lesson activity. And I actually did a little editing already. Normally this wheel would be spinning. The task would be students have to match the quote with the character from Romeo and Juliet, say whether or not it's right or wrong. It's been a long time since I've read that. There we go. And I can see that I have 1 of 3 rounds. So if this were a lesson activity that I wanted to use with my students, some of the ability that I have to differentiate it, I can go back and I can edit this lesson. With all of the lessons from the community, once you play them, they're yours. You can do a variety of different things with it, adding, changing, editing, and it's only going to affect the lesson in your dashboard. It's not going to affect the lesson that has been saved to the community. So the original author for that lesson, it would be exactly the same. So I could theoretically delete everything from this and it's not going to change what had already been saved to the community. So some of the options I have with differentiation, I can change some of the content. I might decide, okay, this is a little long, it's 3 rounds, but I might want to break it up a little bit more for my students. So I could add to this another round. So I'm going to say, match the quote with character. And then I can move pieces around. So maybe let's put Mercutio up there. And let's add in Lady Capulet. There we go. So now I've created another round. I've simplified it a little bit by having the 3 options as opposed to the original 5. So that's one way to change things a little bit for your students. We also have the options of adding sound and recording. So this is a really great feature, especially for students who might be English language learners or just wanting to reinforce vocabulary skills, or if you are a language teacher, having the opportunity to record in another language as well so that students could hear the audio and match with it. So for this one, I will pick just one. So you have to read the quote just to make sure I get it right. So I'm going to, in this case, I'm going to just very quickly record audio. So by setting the record button, if love be rough with you, be rough with love. And I have up to 15 seconds of recording time. So I could do a much longer quote, maybe read it a little faster. I can play back, make sure I like it. And if I'm happy with that, I can now save it. So now that audio has been added to my lesson activity. So then when I move that, my audio will play. If they get it correctly, if love be rough with you, be rough with love. So there we go. You can see that I've recorded. It did work, I promise. I recorded my audio to match with the text that I had read as well. And a lot of our lesson activities that have the tiles, these little squares, you do have the opportunity to add in that audio. So that's a really great feature to help with your students being able to kind of grasp some of the content a little bit more, especially if they're struggling with reading skills or comprehension skills. It's a really great tool to have. I also can change more details with this. Right now I have it in simplified mode. So you see that everything is stationary. I can provide a little added challenge by taking that off. And now you can see just a little extra detail of it's now a little bit more engaging with this for the students. It's also a little more challenging. So having to kind of line up as it's moving along. So In this case, I'm just going to leave it at simplified. And then there's also the option of changing the tile shape as well. So all of our lesson activities do have some level of customization like that. I might also decide, as part of making this lesson a little bit different, is I can add and edit parts of the description. So I could change this entire description for my students, giving them specific instructions of what their task is. I could also provide additional materials. So maybe I wanted to have a web link to certain parts of, this is from Romeo and Juliet. Maybe I want to say, okay, from Act 1, Scene 3, who said what, and then have that part of the text included into it. So these URLs, it's essentially anything that's online. It could be your Google Docs, it could be slideshows, it could be links to other websites or other material that you want the students to access. And then another opportunity I had was I could also add in a video. So in this case, I could directly copy and paste a video link if I knew exactly what I wanted my students to do, or I could do a search through YouTube. Oops, I have to price all things a little bit quickly. And I can pull in any of these little videos that might help. I could also record my own video, upload it to a private YouTube channel, and then provide that as an instruction for my students as well. So let's take this puppet one. If I was happy with the video, I could change when I wanted it to play. So maybe I don't want this video to start until 10 seconds in. Maybe the first 10 seconds is just an advertisement and I don't need that. And I only need the first 2 minutes of it. So I can customize how long I want that video to be. And I could set that video to play before my lesson begins. So now when students participated in this lesson, now we have the puppet video. There we go, we have our puppet video to help the students before they were to complete the task. Now I probably wouldn't use a puppet video with this since it's typically taught in high school. So I can also go back. Other customizations I can do to differentiate this, if I wanted to eliminate some of these visual distractions in the background, I have the ability to change that. So I can change the background. It's going to default to our snowflake background for our theme, but there are a variety of other backgrounds that I could choose from. Depending on the visual needs of my students, I can make it more colorful, I can have it more basic. I could also upload my own background, either something saved from my computer, doing a basic image search. So maybe I wanted to search Romeo and Juliet. I could upload from my Google Drive or my OneDrive, as well as from our content gallery. In our content gallery, this is accessible in the Snowflake app as well as snow.live. So this is not just unique to my computer, this is for everyone. We do have a lot of different backgrounds. So you can see all of our subfolders. And I can add in my new background. So it's something just to change for the needs of my students as well. I also can change the text. So if I had a specific text that was more helpful for my students, I could add that. I could change the size of my text. So lots of just little customizations that help. And I could change the color of my text. So in this case, I'd want to change the background since now I'm losing a little bit of my text up here. So I would edit and change that as well. So those are all just ways to help take one lesson from the community, and I've changed it for a particular set of students.
Danielle,
yes.
We have a question.
Sure.
That as a part of differentiation for your students, would it be possible to use visual clues or photographs as opposed to words in the cards?
Yes, absolutely. That's another really great feature. So right now I have just text that I had typed in, but I also could add in background images. So I will go, let's just select my background. And I can, again, from my computer, so anything that I've already saved, I can also do an image search. So when I do an image search, it's going to pull up any text that I've already written in that box. In this case, I don't really need that. I'm going to change it to, let's say that maybe in addition to reading Romeo and Juliet, you also watched the video with Leonardo DiCaprio. I could then maybe decide which character I want this to be. So I could pick Mercutio. And see if he pops up. Oh, there he is. So now I have, okay, there's my person. Maybe this would help my students remember which actor in the movie that went along with the book, or with the play. So that's one feature that you could do. Now, obviously this is just for Romeo and Juliet, but there's a lot of variety that you could do with this as well. I'm gonna do one just with nothing so we can see kind of from scratch. So I'll just, my first round. So from backgrounds, again, I can browse. So anything that I've saved on my computer, I can do my basic image search. I can pull in from Google Drive, OneDrive, and in our content gallery, we also have a lot of extra drawings. So these would be like some of our little characters. So I'll pull up, let's say I was working on a math lesson. This is going to show me all of the numbers, 0 through 10. Let's do a little purple monkey. And there we go. And I think I picked the number 8. So we can see now we have that new monkey popped in. And I can now match pictures with that. And we have a lot of pictures in our content gallery. Or I could choose to just pull something up from an image search. So it's going to always default to the last thing I searched for. So let's look for the number 9. There we go. Let's pick that one. And then maybe I want this to match to the word. And then again, I could also add in that sound effect. So I could record myself reading the number, and then as it was matched correctly, instead of the ding that you hear there, it would be the audio that I had recorded. So that's one feature of that. So if I were happy with whatever edits I made, or even if I had created this whole lesson from scratch on my own, and I go back to my lesson activities, one of the really great features with Snowflake 2 is I have the ability to duplicate my lessons. So that was the Romeo and Juliet one I had saved from the community. If I select my 3-dot option and I select duplicate, I now have a copy of that. I'm going to rename this. Let's just say that this is math level 1. And then maybe this was my math level 2. So I have the same lessons, I've just duplicated it. And then now I can go and I can edit that lesson and I can add those changes as well. So I can again move things around, I can simplify parts of it, I could add more specific directions for my students. So now I have those lessons geared and ready to go. And without really having to do a whole lot of reinventing, just duplicate, change the little bits that I wanted to change. I also have the ability, so I'm going to go back with this one, of taking this lesson activity. I'm going to go back to edit. And a lot of our lesson activities, you have the ability to copy them in a different format. So with this one, this is a drop lesson activity. It matches with our lesson activity called match. So I'm going to go and change lesson activity type. I'm going to select match. All my data is still there, and now I've just changed the format. I'm going to get rid of this background. change the format, and now my students would simply match. So I haven't had to change any of the data. I've just changed the delivery of that content, so the process in which my students would be completing the lesson activity. There we go. And then it'll go on to the next round. So with that, now that I've created my multiple lessons with not having to do too much extra work as far as editing and changing, and obviously you know the needs of your students, you would know better what would work for your kiddos, what needs they have as far as visuals, what needs they have as far as having maybe audio included, or breaking down the process of what they need to do. Those are all features you know your kids, and you can change and edit. So then I can take this lesson activity, go back to my lesson activities, and I can send this to my students. So one of the features that we have in Snow.Live is we have the ability to create classes. I'll show you that as well. I can take this lesson activity. I might want to send it to my students as a practice where they can complete it multiple times without a grade attached to it, just to become familiar, or I can send this particular one as an assessment with a gradable score at the end. I would then select which class. So right now I have my Snowflake demo class, has multiple students in it, and I can select which students I want to complete that task. So this is a great feature. I could send the same version of the lesson to all of my students, or if I had different levels, like if this was for level 1 students, I could send it to those particular students, and then I could send a different lesson to a different set of students. So they would still have similar content, it would just be delivered to them in slightly different means. And then I'll add my due date. And then now that assignment has been sent to those particular students in my class. So, and from that, if I go to my classes, so I showed you how to send the assignments, I'll do a quick overview on how to create your classes. So we have 3 options for creating classes. You can manually enter by adding a new class. So it just gives like a random number at the end. You can change that. So maybe I want this to be my reading centers class. I can add in my students individually. So if I wanted to add Jack to my class, I can add that student's email, or I can select student has no email. If I select student has no email, and I know that this is important for a lot of our younger grades where they don't receive outside email, this is a feature you would want to use. And then now that student would use this login information in order to join in with my class. I also have the option, I'm going to go back to manage students, to import my class via Google Classroom. So as long as I have the same login information for my Snowflake account as for my Google account, I would be able to get my course list. I only have one course in my Google Classroom. I would select that, and I've already loaded it once, and it would pull in the roster of my students. In this case, those were the 4 students I had here. The little check mark next to the name is going to show me students who have already logged in. And then the third option for creating your classes is importing a CSV file. For the CSV file, all you would need would be the student email. It filters out everything else. So as it's imported, your student names would appear as their email names. And then you have the ability to go through and edit. So if I went to my math class, I can go and I can change, if this were the email, I could change the name to something else. So with all of the classes I've created and the assignments that I've sent, I can also review those assignments. We can see this assignment has been sent. I can see if my students opened it. Oh, they haven't opened it yet. It's unopened. So obviously I can't see how they've done on it, but I can see if I go to a different assignment. So it's going to show me all of my assignments for this class. And I can select an assignment that has been completed. I can see the student opened the assignment, scored 75%, the amount of time that it took my student, and then I can provide customized feedback for the student. So I can see which answers they had correct, which ones were incorrect. My student would also see the same screen if this were a gradable assessment. So they would see that they had 18 out of 24 correct answers with a score of 75. and they would be able to see which ones they answered correctly and incorrectly. And they would be able to see any feedback that I provided for that student. So I've walked you through how to create groups, how to differentiate some of those lesson activities, and then send them to your students in creating your classes. I'd like to open up any questions that we have.
Danielle, the question you had from Diane was, my question is for the question and answer section of the training. When creating a tag lesson, how do I change the image layout when selecting from my Google Drive account? Thank you for the help.
Of course. So I'm going to go and create that. So I love the tag lesson template. I know I said that before, but I really like it. I think there's so much flexibility in what you can do with it. So from tags, I'm going to create my content. My content are going to be the little pins, so basically the answers that will appear on a particular image. So in this case, I'm just going to keep it simple. I'm just going to do letters. And then I go to my customized content. So I believe the question was, how do I take this image and change it from something that has been saved in my Google Drive? So for that, you would go to Browse New Image. Linking with your Google Drive. Right now, I'm in my demo class, so I only have my Google Classroom. I'm not sure if I have any images in there yet. So you should be able to, in normal circumstances, if I had stuff in my drive. I only use this account for demos just because it's a little bit more organized and not as messy as when I'm working on content. So you're not having to see the 15 different in progress lessons that I'm creating. But for this one, it'd be very simple, opening it from your Google Drive. You would need it to be saved as a JPEG though. And then the dimensions usually scale pretty well. What I do whenever I save something, I build a lot using Google Drawings. It gives a lot of really good flexibility, and especially if I want that image to be something that I could share as a link within the lesson. And with that, whenever I've created something, I would always download it as a JPEG, and then it saves, and I can then upload that JPEG in to change my background image. So to give you an idea of that, let me see if I have one saved in my backgrounds. Oh, there we go. There's a math one. So this is actually one I had made in my Google Drive. And then I saved it as a JPEG and uploaded. So we can see, simple as that. For the resolution, the scale that I used, I did it by pixels, and I did 1920 by, I think it was by 1080 was the resolution that I used. It seemed to be kind of a good size as far as taking up that amount of the screen.
Danielle?
Yes.
Diane said that in her image she tried posting, was a vertical image, but when it posted into tags, it posted horizontally.
Oh, so it rotated?
And it made it kind of like, instead of portrait or landscape, it changed it.
Interesting. I have to say, I've never had, I totally believe you. I've never had that happen to me before. Let me try saving with maybe a different size image and see if I can replicate that. So that's saving the same.
Diane, so, if you will send me an email at jr@nuitec.com, Danielle and I will try to recreate that problem and see what we can do with it.
Yeah,
I'll get back to you, but I want to make sure that we look into it.
That is, I'm sorry you're experiencing that. That is something I've never had happen to me before.
And maybe actually, if you could include the image that you email, that would be wonderful. Like whatever image you were trying to post, email it to me, and we'll try to do the same thing to recreate it. And then Laura Finnegan asked, is the Arctic Fox clip art you used in your demo group available in the content gallery?
It is not available in the content gallery. It was sent to us when we were doing our sticker packs. They were just demos that were given to us, and I thought they were cute, so I made individual ones. But I'm sure that is a question that we could ask about because they are really adorable. So I'm going to write that down too.
But then I wanted to check and make sure that we've answered all the questions and give you ample opportunity to ask any other questions that you would like in the question boxes. And yes, we did. I think what we can do, Laura, is try to send in those little clip arts if that's what you like, and see if we can get those put in for you.
Are there any questions about maybe any of the template designs, how to use those within your classroom, or any other features that we could help with, I know I had mentioned before, the gradable assessments to see which lesson activities are gradable. That's this feature right here. You just simply click it. All of them can be played as practice. But if you wanted to send to your students to create a score, it would be that one.
Kimberly is asking, could I make everyone's email my email so I could recover or change their passwords?
In order to have different students in the class, is that what you're asking, I believe? So
yeah, and you would not be able to, because then you would be able to differentiate.
Right, you could technically go and change the students' passwords. So if I went back to my managed students, I know especially with like the littler kids, the password could get a little confusing for them. So if I had my meeting center and I wanted to add my student, let's add Danielle to this class. Student has no email. Before giving my student their password, I could, what I did with my 6th graders, since they weren't able to receive outside emails as well, I copied and pasted this into a document. In hindsight, going back, even for 6th graders, they got really confused with some of the password. I would suggest you can use their login information. So you could take this student, you could log in with that account and then with that password, and then you have the ability to change that password. So to show you where that feature would be. So right now this is saying, hi teacher, I'm logged in with my teacher account. If you use those credentials for your student, I can go to my profile. I then have the opportunity to select change password. And then I would put in what that auto-generated password would be, and then I would change my student's password. And that would make it a little bit easier for your kiddos too. I hope that answered your question. But they do need to have separate accounts in order to be able to access the Snow.Live platform. And the great thing with this too is once they have their account, they can play all of the lesson activities from the community. So if you found something from the community and you didn't want to assign it, you just wanted to share it with your kiddos to play. So I'd say I wanted to share this one. If I go to my lesson activity info, I could then just share that link to them. So I could email the link, or I could share it on Google Classroom. And as long as my students have logged into their account, they can play the lesson as well. And they also have the ability to create their own lessons and kind of similar features to what you have as a teacher.
I think we've answered all the questions. If anything else you popping up right now before we end, feel free to drop it in there and we'll answer for you. But as far as support, again, Danielle's email is danielle@nuitec.com. Mine is jr@nuitec.com. Anything that we could do for you, please let us know.
I'm here all the time, so anytime you would need us to go, I'm always around.
Thank you so much, everyone, for signing in this evening.
Yep, so just wrapping up, we are still doing our Twitter challenge, so if you're using social media, we do also have a Facebook Snowflake community that we would love anyone who's interested in joining. We post a lot of really great stuff there, but for our Twitter challenge, we're asking anyone who's interested to create a lesson activity, share and tag on Twitter, tagging @NUITEQ Snowflake, for your chance to win a goodie bag for you and your classroom, which hopefully you'll be able to return to before the school year ends. More times that you enter, more opportunities to win. And our marketing person will be organizing all of those entries as they start coming in.
Thank you so much for everything that you're doing. Let us know how we can support you, and we look forward to seeing you again next week, or before if we have the drop-in times.
All right, bye everyone. Thanks again.
Have a wonderful week.
Bye now.